While I was stirring spaghetti sauce, I opened the baby monitor just to make sure my 6-month-old daughter was still asleep. Instead of an empty nursery, I saw my husband standing over her crib. He looked around as if he wanted to make sure no one was watching. Then he leaned down until his lips were inches from her face. I couldn't hear him, so I turned the volume all the way up. That's when I heard him whisper, "You're not supposed to exist." My wooden spoon slipped out of my hand and hit the kitchen floor. I ran upstairs, convinced I was about to save my daughter from something unimaginable. I had no idea that what I was about to discover wasn't just a secret. It was the slow collapse of everything I thought I knew about my husband. My name is Emily Carter, and for almost 9 years I believed I'd married one of the kindest men in Ohio. Looking back now, I understand that people rarely become strangers overnight. Sometimes they've simply been hiding in plain sight. 6 months earlier, our daughter Lily had entered the world after nearly 5 years of infertility treatments, heartbreak, and more doctor's appointments than I could count. Before she was born, my life had revolved around a 3rd-grade classroom at an elementary school just outside Columbus. I loved teaching, but after Lily arrived, I decided to take an extended maternity leave. Nathan and I agreed it made sense financially, and if I was honest, I couldn't imagine leaving her with anyone else yet. She had become our entire world, or at least, she had become mine. Nathan was 36, a financial planner whose clients described him as steady, thoughtful, and trustworthy. Friends admired him because he never raised his voice, always remembered birthdays, and somehow managed to stay calm during every neighborhood barbecue or family gathering. He wasn't flashy. He drove the same gray SUV he'd owned for years, mowed the lawn every Saturday morning, and volunteered to help elderly neighbors shovel snow during winter. If someone had asked me to describe him back then, I would have said he was dependable. Dependable people don't terrify you through a baby monitor. At least that's what I believed. Life with a 6-month-old wasn't glamorous. Most mornings began around 5:30 when Lily woke hungry. I'd carry her downstairs wrapped in her favorite yellow blanket, warm a bottle while watching the sunrise through the kitchen window, then spend the next hour rocking her until she drifted back to sleep against my shoulder. Nathan usually left for work around 7:30. He'd kiss my forehead, kiss Lily's head, grab his travel mug, then disappear into another day of meetings. It looked like the picture of a happy American family. There were tiny imperfections, of course. Parenthood exhausted both of us. We argued about whose turn it was to buy diapers, whether we should repaint the nursery, and why the dishwasher always seemed full. Nothing unusual. Nothing that suggested our marriage stood on the edge of a cliff. Still, little things had begun bothering me. Nathan rarely volunteered to hold Lily for very long. If she cried, he'd hand her back after only a minute or two. "I think she wants her mom," he'd say with an awkward smile. Everyone assumed he was simply nervous around babies. Even I accepted that explanation. Some fathers take longer to adjust. My own father admitted it took him months before he felt confident changing diapers. So I waited. I told myself bonding happened differently for everyone. There were other moments, though. At Lily's 6-month pediatric appointment, the nurse smiled while measuring her height. "She has your husband's eyes," she said. Nathan laughed politely. I don't know about that. It seemed harmless. Except he never followed it with what most proud fathers would say. He never looked closely at Lily's face searching for similarities. Never joked about her inheriting his stubbornness. Never smiled when relatives compared them. Instead, he changed the subject. Every single time. I noticed. Then convinced myself I was imagining patterns that weren't there. Sleep deprivation does strange things to new mothers. Or so I kept telling myself. My best friend Rachel came over every Thursday afternoon after finishing work at the hospital. She brought coffee, helped fold laundry, and entertained Lily while I showered. One Thursday, she watched Nathan arrive home early. He leaned over the playmat. "Hey there, Peanut." Lily reached toward him. He smiled, then glanced at his phone. Within seconds, he stood back up. "I've got one last work call." Rachel watched him disappear into his home office before looking at me. "He's been working a lot?" "Quarterly reports," I answered automatically. You've said that for 2 months. I shrugged. He'll settle down. She didn't argue. She simply gave me the kind of look only lifelong friends can give. A look that says they hope you're right while quietly fearing you aren't. A week later, we hosted my parents for dinner. My father bounced Lily on his knee until she squealed with laughter. My mother took dozens of pictures. Nathan smiled for every photograph. But afterward, when Mom texted the family group chat with all the pictures, I noticed something strange. Nathan wasn't looking at Lily in any of them. He was looking toward the camera, almost as though he were posing beside a stranger's child. Again, I dismissed it. Maybe I was becoming overly sensitive. Postpartum hormones. Too little sleep. Too much coffee. Pick an explanation. Any explanation except the obvious one. Tuesday evenings followed the same comfortable routine. Nathan usually came home around 5:30. I'd start dinner. Lily took her evening nap upstairs around 6. After dinner, we'd watch television while she slept until her bedtime feeding. Ordinary. Predictable. Safe. That Tuesday looked no different. Rain tapped gently against the kitchen windows while Frank Sinatra played softly through the smart speaker. I stirred homemade spaghetti sauce, tasted it, added another pinch of oregano, then reached for the grated Parmesan. Out of habit, I picked up the baby monitor sitting on the counter. The screen flickered to life. The nursery appeared exactly as I'd expected. Soft gray walls. White crib. The mobile of tiny stars slowly turning above Lily's sleeping face. Then the bedroom door opened. Nathan stepped inside. I smiled without thinking. How sweet. Maybe he'd decided to check on her before dinner. He walked quietly across the room. Stopped beside the crib. Looked down at Lily for several long seconds. His shoulders seemed strangely tense. Instead of smiling, he leaned forward. Closer. So close that his lips were only inches above her tiny face. I couldn't hear anything. The monitor volume had been turned almost all the way down after her afternoon nap. I reached over with one finger, pressed the volume button. Once. Twice. 3 times. Static crackled softly. Then Nathan's voice came through the speaker. Low? Barely above a whisper. You're not supposed to exist. The wooden spoon slipped from my fingers and hit the kitchen floor. My heart slammed against my ribs so violently I thought I might actually faint. Nathan remained bent over the crib, still whispering, and I realized I hadn't heard the rest yet. Nathan remained bent over the crib. Whoa, you ruined everything, he whispered. She should have been mine. None of this was supposed to happen. For a second, my mind tried to rearrange the words into something harmless, something a decent husband might say under stress. There was no harmless version. Then Lily stirred. Nathan straightened so quickly that the edge of his shoulder struck the mobile. The little felt stars trembled above the crib. He glanced toward the nursery door, and I saw something on his face I had never seen before. Not anger exactly, but panic. I left the sauce bubbling on the stove and ran. I barely remember crossing the kitchen or taking the stairs, only my feet pounding against the hardwood and my breath tearing through my chest. By the time I reached the nursery, Nathan was standing near the window with his hands in his pockets. He looked almost normal. That frightened me more than the whisper. What did you just say to her? His eyes narrowed slightly. What? To Lily, I heard you. He gave a short, confused laugh. Heard me say what? I moved between him and the crib without thinking. Lily was awake now, blinking up at us, one tiny fist pressed against her cheek. You said she wasn't supposed to exist. You said she ruined everything. Nathan stared at me for a long moment, then rubbed both hands over his face. Emily, I was talking to myself. You were leaning over her crib. I came in here because I had a headache. I was thinking out loud. About our baby ruining everything? He exhaled through his nose, the way he did when a client had asked the same question twice. You're taking fragments of a sentence and turning them into something insane. I heard every word. No, you heard what you expected to hear. The practiced certainty almost made me doubt myself. Then Lily whimpered. I lifted her from the crib and held her against my chest. Nathan watched me, his expression hardening. "This is exactly what I've been worried about," he said. "What does that mean?" "You haven't been yourself since she was born." I stared at him. He lowered his voice, suddenly gentle. "You barely sleep. You check the monitor every 10 minutes. You panic when she coughs. Maybe this is postpartum anxiety, Emily." There it was, the clean explanation offered with concern, wrapped around an accusation. "You think I imagined it? I think you're overwhelmed." "You said it." I said I never imagined my life turning out this way. That's not the same thing. That is not what I heard. Nathan stepped closer, but I backed away. "Look at you," he said softly. "You're shaking." "Because my husband just told our daughter she ruined his life." His jaw tightened. "Keep your voice down." "Why? Afraid she'll hear the truth twice?" His face changed then. The calm disappeared only for a second, but I saw it. "Don't do this," he said. "Do what?" "Create a crisis because you're tired." Downstairs, the smoke alarm began chirping. The sauce. I carried Lily out of the room without another word. Nathan followed me into the kitchen, turned off the burner, and moved the pan away from the heat. The bottom had scorched. Red sauce had spit across the stovetop. That night, we ate cereal in silence. Nathan tried once to touch my hand. I pulled it away. After Lily fell asleep again, I sat alone at the kitchen table and opened the baby monitor app. My hands were still trembling, but not enough to stop me from finding the recording. The device stored 24 hours of footage in the cloud. I downloaded the clip. Then I downloaded it again to my laptop and emailed a copy to myself. I listened with headphones. "You're not supposed to exist. You ruined everything. She should have been mine. I never wanted this." The sentence was even worse without panic distorting it. He had not been talking to himself. He had been talking to Lily. I slept in the guest room with the baby monitor beside me. The next morning, Nathan acted as if we'd had an ordinary argument. He made coffee, he packed his lunch. He kissed the top of my head while I stood at the sink. "I'm sorry you're struggling," he said. "Not I'm sorry for what I said." "Not I'm sorry I frightened you." "I'm sorry you're struggling." After he left, I called Rachel. She arrived 40 minutes later wearing navy scrubs under a winter coat, even though she was supposed to be sleeping before her night shift. I played the recording once. She didn't interrupt. When it ended, she sat very still. "Do you think he would hurt her?" she asked. The question made my stomach twist. "I don't know." "That means you don't leave them alone together." "He's her father." "And you just told me you don't know whether he's safe." I looked toward the living room, where Lily slept in her bassinet. Rachel reached across the table and took my hand. "Don't confront him again until you understand what this is," she said. "Save everything. Dates, texts, recordings. Don't rely on memory." It sounded cold. It also sounded necessary. Over the next week, I began watching Nathan differently. He kept his phone face down. He changed the password on his home office computer. He stepped onto the back patio for calls even when the temperature dropped below freezing. Once, when I entered the laundry room, he ended a call so abruptly that the screen was still glowing in his hand. "Client," he said before I asked. I began keeping notes in an encrypted file on my laptop. Tuesday, 7:14 p.m., monitor recording. Wednesday, claimed postpartum anxiety. Friday, private call outside, 9:22 p.m. I hated the person I was becoming, quiet, watchful, suspicious. But I hated even more that he had made caution feel like betrayal. The following Monday, Nathan left his laptop open when he went to shower. I sat at his desk, my pulse racing, and opened the cloud backup connected to our family account. Most recent messages had been deleted. The backup had not synced yet. I restored the folder. Hundreds of conversations appeared. I expected another woman. Instead, every message was from the same contact. Mom. And the newest one read, "She was never supposed to become pregnant. Now you're trapped for 18 years. She was never supposed to become pregnant. Now you're trapped for 18 years. I read the message 3 times. Then I scrolled upward. The conversation stretched back years, past Lily's birth, the embryo transfer, and the hopeful phone calls that had once felt sacred. Nathan had told his mother everything. not just medical updates. Everything. My failed cycles, my crying, my fear that I was disappointing him. Even the night I'd sat on the bathroom floor after our second miscarriage and told him I didn't know how much more I could take. His mother had replied, "You can still leave before this destroys your life." Nathan had written, "I know." My hands went cold. There were hundreds of messages like that. Some were subtle. "She's making you responsible for her grief." Others were cruel. "A child won't fix a broken woman." Nathan rarely defended me. Most of the time he agreed. Sometimes he complained that our fertility treatments had consumed too much money, even though he had held my hand in every clinic waiting room and told me we were in it together. Then I found messages from 3 months before Lily was conceived. His mother had asked, "Are you still thinking about moving out?" Nathan replied, "After tax season, I can't do this forever." A week later, our final embryo transfer succeeded. I remembered Nathan crying when the nurse called. I had believed those tears were joy. Now I wondered whether they had been grief for the exit he had already planned. The shower shut off upstairs. I closed the restored folder, cleared the recent activity, and returned the laptop to the exact angle where I'd found it. By the time Nathan came downstairs, I was standing at the kitchen counter slicing an apple. "You okay?" he asked. "Just tired." He nodded as though that confirmed something. For the rest of the day, I moved through the house like an actress performing the role of my own life. I warmed Lily's bottle, folded towels, answered a text from my mother, and listened while Nathan complained about a client who had ignored his retirement advice. Every ordinary detail felt false. That night, after he fell asleep, I copied the restored messages to a flash drive and hid it inside an old box of classroom supplies in the basement. The next morning, I called Rachel. She listened while I explained, then said, "This is bigger than one horrible moment." "I know." "Do you have somewhere safe to go?" "My parents, if I need to." "Then figure out what you need before he realizes you know." I hated how practical she sounded. I also needed it. 2 days later, I met with a family law attorney named Carla Mendez in an office overlooking downtown Columbus. She was in her 50s, with silver in her dark hair and a voice that never rose. I played the monitor recording. Then I showed her the messages. Carla read slowly. When she finished, she folded her hands on the desk. "This is disturbing," she said, "but I want to be precise. Resentment, even ugly resentment, is not automatically proof that he is physically dangerous." I hated the answer, though I knew she was right. "What can I do?" "Document behavior. Protect the child. Don't manufacture confrontations. Ohio courts focus on the best interests of the child and judges care about patterns, not dramatic speeches." She explained temporary custody, shared parenting, supervised visitation, and the difference between what felt unforgivable and what could be proven. "Should I leave?" "If you believe Lily is in immediate danger, yes. Otherwise, leaving the marital home can create practical complications. For now, don't leave them alone together." "That won't be easy." "Then make it look natural." Carla also advised me to speak with a therapist. Not because Nathan was right about me, but because fear had already begun changing how I thought. I made an appointment the next day. Dr. Helen Price's office smelled faintly of peppermint tea. I told her everything, including the part I was most ashamed of. "Sometimes I stare at him and wonder whether I ever knew him." She nodded. "You knew the version he chose to show you." "Does that make me stupid?" "No, trust is not stupidity. Misusing trust is a choice made by the other person." I cried because kindness had become harder to bear than cruelty. Over several weeks, I built routines around safety. Lily came with me to the grocery store, even when it would have been easier to leave her home. Rachel stopped by more often. My mother began visiting on Wednesdays. I told Nathan I was considering returning to teaching part-time, which gave me a believable reason to organize finances and gather records. He seemed relieved by my calm. That was his mistake. Meanwhile, the messages revealed more. Nathan's mother had never wanted Lily, but not because of anything Lily had done. She believed my infertility had stolen years from her son. She spoke about him as though marriage were a business deal that had failed to produce returns. "You could have had a different wife," she wrote. Nathan answered, "I could have had a different life." The sentence hurt more than an affair. An affair could be blamed on desire, recklessness, fantasy. This was colder. He had stayed, smiled for photographs, attended appointments, and let me believe we were building the same future while privately mourning it. Still, one question remained. Who was she in the nursery? She should have been mine. At first I thought he meant another woman's child. Then I found an older message from his mother mentioning a woman named Claire, someone Nathan had dated briefly before me. "Claire has 2 boys now," she wrote. "That should have been your family." So that was it. Lily had become a symbol of the life Nathan believed I had stolen. Not a child to him. A consequence. One Friday afternoon, I came home from the pharmacy and found a padded envelope on the kitchen counter. Nathan snatched it up too quickly. "What's that?" I asked. "Work stuff." The label showed the name of a private laboratory. That night, after he went to bed, I checked our shared credit card. There was a new charge. $249. At-home paternity test. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. Nathan had ordered proof that Lily was his. And somehow I knew he wasn't hoping the answer would be yes. The next morning, I placed the laboratory envelope back exactly where Nathan had left it. Then I made pancakes. Lily sat in her high chair wearing a bib covered in tiny strawberries, smearing banana across the tray, while Nathan read emails on his phone. I watched him over the rim of my coffee mug and wondered how a person could look so ordinary while quietly searching for a reason to erase his own responsibility. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked. "Fine." He nodded, satisfied by the answer. For the first time in weeks, I understood that Nathan did not need me to believe him. He only needed me to remain predictable. So I did. 2 evenings later, he brought up the test while we were loading the dishwasher. "I ordered something," he said. I kept my eyes on the plates. "For work?" He hesitated. "A paternity test." I turned slowly. He held up both hands. "Before you react, let me explain." "I'm listening." His face settled into that calm, professional expression he used with anxious clients. "This isn't an accusation. I just need certainty." "Certainty about what?" "About Lily." The cruelty of saying her name so gently almost broke my composure. "You think she isn't yours?" "I didn't say that." "You ordered a DNA test." "I'm allowed to have questions." "What questions?" He looked away. The timing was complicated. The timing was monitored by a fertility clinic. "I know." "Your sample was collected there. My embryo transfer was performed there. What exactly is complicated?" His jaw tightened. "I knew you'd make this emotional." I nearly laughed. Instead, I dried my hands on a dish towel and said, "Fine." He blinked. "Fine?" "Do the test." Suspicion crossed his face. He had expected tears, anger, maybe a desperate refusal he could later describe as proof of guilt. I gave him nothing. The test required cheek swabs from Nathan and Lily. I insisted we follow the directions together at the kitchen table, and I took photographs of the sealed samples before he mailed them. I also emailed Carla that night. Her reply came within an hour. "Let him complete it. Keep records. Do not interfere." 10 days later, the results arrived. Nathan opened the email in his office while I stood behind him. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. He stared at the screen. I waited for relief. A laugh. A hand over his heart. Anything resembling gratitude that the child sleeping down the hall was unquestionably his daughter. Instead, he shoved the chair backward. This company could be wrong. I felt something inside me go still. "You chose the company." "Home tests aren't legally binding." "That wasn't your concern before." He stood and paced toward the window. "This doesn't prove what happened at the clinic." "It proves you're Lily's father." He turned sharply. "Why are you acting so smug?" "Smug? You look like you won something." I studied him. "No, Nathan, you look like you lost." For a second, neither of us spoke. Then his face emptied. "I have a meeting," he said. It was 8:30 at night. He grabbed his coat and left. I stood in the office listening to the garage door rise, and the truth finally became undeniable. Nathan had not wanted reassurance. He had wanted an escape hatch. The paternity test had closed it. After that, the atmosphere in our house changed. Nathan stopped pretending to be affectionate. He became polite instead, which was worse. He asked whether I had taken my vitamins, whether Lily's pediatric appointment had gone well, whether we needed milk. Small, careful questions designed to make him sound attentive. At the same time, his mother began calling more often. I could hear only Nathan's side of the conversations. "No, she seems stable today." "Yes, I'm documenting it." I know what the attorney said. The word attorney made my skin prickle. One afternoon, I found a printed article beside the home office printer. Signs of postpartum anxiety and maternal instability. Several lines had been highlighted. Excessive monitoring. Difficulty trusting others with the baby. Persistent fear of harm. I photographed every page. Then I checked the browser history on our shared tablet. Nathan had searched. Can postpartum anxiety affect custody? How to prove spouse is mentally unstable. Ohio shared parenting presumption. He was building a story. Unfortunately for him, I had already built the truth. Dr. Price had documented every session. Her notes reflected that I was frightened, but rational, sleeping poorly because of a legitimate marital crisis, and taking appropriate steps to protect Lily without becoming reckless. Lily's pediatrician had records showing I attended every appointment, followed medical advice, and asked ordinary questions for a first-time mother. Rachel had witnessed Nathan's distance. My parents had seen me caring for Lily daily. Even our neighbor, Mrs. Donnelly, had watched me take walks with the stroller every morning and could describe me as calm, attentive, and consistent. Nathan had assumed the label postpartum would do the work for him. He had forgotten that responsible adults leave evidence, too. The confrontation came on a Sunday afternoon. His mother, Diane, arrived without warning, carrying a grocery store casserole and a smile that never reached her eyes. She sat in our living room while Lily played on a blanket between us. "You look tired, Emily," she said. "I have a baby." "Of course, but some mothers know when they need more help." Nathan stood near the fireplace, silent. I understood immediately. They wanted a reaction. "What kind of help?" I asked. Diane folded her hands. "Maybe Lily could stay with us for a few days, give you time to rest." "No." The answer was calm. Her smile tightened. "You didn't even consider it." "I did." Nathan finally spoke. "Emily, this is what I mean. You won't let anyone help." "I let Rachel help. My mother helps. Lily's pediatrician helps." Diane leaned forward. "But not her father's family." I looked directly at her. "Not anyone who believes she ruined his life." Nathan's face drained of color. Diane looked at him, then back at me. "What are you talking about?" I could have exposed everything. Instead, I picked up Lily and stood. "I'm saying the answer is no." That night, Nathan slept in the guest room. 3 days later, a process server knocked on our door while I was warming Lily's bottle. Nathan had filed for divorce. He requested shared custody, equal parenting time, and exclusive temporary use of the house. The petition described him as a devoted father. It described me as emotionally unstable, controlling, and unwilling to support his relationship with our daughter. At the bottom of the final page, I saw Carla's name handwritten beside a court date. I called her immediately. "He thinks he's ahead of us," I said. Carla was quiet for a moment. "Good," she replied. "Let him keep thinking that." The courthouse smelled faintly of old paper, floor polish, and burnt coffee. I sat beside Carla at a long wooden table while Nathan sat across the aisle with his attorney. He wore a navy suit I had bought him for a promotion dinner 3 years earlier, and for one strange moment, I remembered straightening that same tie in our bedroom while Lily kicked inside me. Now he would not look at me. The first hearing was temporary, but Carla warned me that temporary arrangements often became permanent. Nathan's attorney opened by describing him as an involved father who had been systematically excluded from Lily's daily life. He spoke about my anxiety, my monitor checking, my reluctance to allow overnight visits with Diane. He made ordinary caution sound pathological. Then Carla stood. She did not raise her voice. She simply began with dates. The night of the recording. The week Nathan ordered the paternity test. The internet searches about maternal instability. The messages between Nathan and his mother. When Carla played the baby monitor audio, the courtroom became so quiet I could hear the ventilation system humming above us. You're not supposed to exist. You ruined everything. She should have been mine. I never wanted this. Nathan stared at the table. His attorney shifted in his chair. The judge, a woman named Judith Brenner, listened without visible reaction, but she asked for the recording to be played again. Then she looked at Nathan. Were those your words? Nathan swallowed. They were taken out of context. What context would make them appropriate to say over an infant's crib? His attorney rose. Your Honor, I asked Mr. Carter. Nathan's face reddened. I was under extreme emotional strain. The judge wrote something on her legal pad. Carla did not smile. Neither did I. There was no victory in hearing the ugliest moment of my marriage played in a public room. There was only exposure. Over the next several weeks, the case unfolded through documents, interviews, and testimony. Real legal proceedings were slower and colder than television. Every claim had to be supported, every emotion translated into evidence. Dr. Price testified that I had shown appropriate concern, clear thinking, and no symptoms suggesting I was a danger to Lily. She was anxious, Nathan's attorney said. Yes, Dr. Price replied, because she had discovered credible reasons to question her husband's behavior. Did she express fear that he might harm the child? She expressed uncertainty and sought professional guidance. That is not the same as irrational fear. Lily's pediatrician confirmed I attended appointments and followed every recommendation. Rachel testified about the recording and Nathan's emotional distance. My mother described the daily care she had watched me provide. Mrs. Donnelly, our neighbor, testified for less than 10 minutes, but her words stayed with me. Emily never looked unstable, she said. She looked tired. There's a difference. Then Carla introduced Nathan's messages. Diane was called first. She entered, wearing a cream-colored jacket and an expression of wounded dignity. She insisted her messages had been misunderstood. You wrote, she was never supposed to become pregnant, correct? Carla asked. I was referring to the medical odds. You also wrote, now you're trapped for 18 years. I was worried about my son's finances. And when you wrote, a child won't fix a broken woman, were you offering financial advice? Diane's mouth tightened. Nathan's attorney objected. The judge overruled him. Carla continued gently. Did you encourage your son to leave his marriage before Lily was conceived? I encouraged him to be honest about his happiness. Did you advise him to document Emily's behavior after the monitor incident? I advised him to protect himself. From what? Diane hesitated. That pause did more damage than any accusation. Later, she claimed Nathan had always wanted equal custody. Carla showed her a message sent 2 months before the filing. If I'm forced to stay, I'll make sure she handles the baby. I'm not giving up my life, too. Diane said she did not remember receiving it. The phone records showed she had replied, then start planning now. By the time Nathan testified, the confident story in his petition had begun to collapse. He said he loved Lily. Carla asked why he had questioned her paternity after an IVF pregnancy performed through a documented clinic process. I needed certainty. Why were you angry when the result confirmed you were her father? I wasn't angry. Carla displayed a text he had sent Diane that night. Test came back positive. There goes that option. Nathan closed his eyes. The courtroom was silent again. Carla waited before asking the next question. What option? Leaving without being blamed. The words landed heavily. Carla did not press immediately. She let them remain in the air. Then she asked, Did you want primary custody of your daughter? Nathan looked toward the judge. I wanted fairness. That was not my question. His shoulders sagged. No. Did you want equal parenting time? I thought that was what I was supposed to request. Why? Because my attorney said it would put me in a stronger position. The judge's expression hardened. Carla's final question was quiet. Did you ever want to be Lily's father? Nathan looked at me for the first time all morning. There was shame in his face, but also something emptier. "I tried," he said. "That is not an answer." His voice broke. "I never bonded with her. I kept thinking Emily would eventually take her and leave, and then I wouldn't have to be the bad person." I felt the words like a physical blow, though none of them surprised me anymore. The judge awarded me primary residential custody. Nathan received supervised visitation through an approved center, contingent on counseling, parenting classes, and demonstrated consistency. He was ordered to pay child support and contribute to Lily's medical expenses. It was not total victory. It was something better. It was protection grounded in truth. Outside the courthouse, Nathan stood alone near the steps while Carla and I reviewed the next filing deadline. Diane walked past him without stopping. He called her name once. She kept going. For years, she had told him every consequence was someone else's fault. The moment the consequences became his, even she abandoned him. Nathan looked at me across the sidewalk. I held his gaze, then turned away. I had not destroyed his life. I had simply stopped helping him hide from the life he had chosen. 1 year after the courthouse hearing, Lily learned to run across our backyard. She did it badly at first. Arms lifted for balance, knees stiff, laughter bursting out of her every time she nearly fell. I stood near the patio with both hands ready, even though she rarely needed me to catch her anymore. That was the hardest lesson motherhood had taught me. Protection did not mean preventing every fall. It meant making sure the ground beneath her was safe enough to stand on again. We no longer lived in the gray house where Nathan had whispered over her crib. The divorce agreement required us to sell it, and I thought leaving would feel like another loss. Instead, the day I handed over the keys, I sat in my car and breathed more freely than I had in months. Lily and I moved into a small 2-bedroom house in Worthington, 10 minutes from my parents, and close enough to my old school that I could hear the marching band practicing on Friday afternoons. The kitchen was narrow. The floors creaked. The backyard fence leaned slightly toward Mrs. Alvarez's garden next door. It was perfect. I returned to teaching part-time in the fall. On my first morning back, I stood outside my classroom holding a paper cup of coffee while 22 third-graders hurried past me carrying backpacks almost as large as they were. The noise should have overwhelmed me. Instead, it felt like coming home to a part of myself I had nearly forgotten. Rachel helped with Lily twice a week, and my mother covered one afternoon. On Fridays, I picked Lily up from daycare early, and we stopped at the library before going home. She liked books with animals and refused to sit still for anything longer than 6 pages. Our life was not dramatic. That was its greatest luxury. Nathan completed the parenting classes because the court required them. For the first 3 months, he attended supervised visits inconsistently. He canceled twice for work, and once because he said the visitation center made him feel judged. The coordinator documented every absence. I did not call him. I did not remind him. I had spent too many years carrying the emotional weight of his choices. Fatherhood was no longer a role I would manage for him. Then something changed. He began arriving early. He stopped bringing expensive toys Lily was too young to understand and started bringing simple things. A board book, a container of sliced strawberries, a soft ball they could roll across the floor. The visitation supervisor reported that he still seemed awkward, but he was attentive. He learned how Lily liked her cup held. He learned that she became frightened by hand dryers in public restrooms. He learned not to reach for her too quickly when she hesitated. None of that erased what he had done. But accountability was not supposed to be erasure. It was supposed to be evidence of change. 8 months after the hearing, I received a letter from